Hey everybody, welcome to Podcasty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Clint Eastwood, where we watch every film directed by and or starring American filmmaker Clint Eastwood and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, show's hosted by two guys. I'm one of the guys, my name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys, my name is Ian Ryan. How's it going, Jake?
I'm doing fine. I've had some of my sweet tangerine positive energy tea, and I'm feeling all the sweet tangerine positive energy.
I like it.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Got heartburn. That's always a good app when I got the heartburn going.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good. It doesn't sound like I have the killer edge that you have today, but I'll do my best.
No, you don't. Right. Now I'm just thinking about a killer edge and how I might just lay down upon it, you know. Anyway,
sounds
getting
nice.
Distracted. Let's bring our guest in. Our guest today, very excited to have him. He's a writer, podcaster, a Michigander, crucially, and the host of Yo, Is This Racist? Andrew T. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm finally got this all running. I was, I'll be honest, didn't read the not even technical part of the email when it came in, and I was scrambling when it was time to try to log on to the software.
Hey, you know,
downloaded Chrome.
Oh,
sweet.
Baby.
Well, now I'm not really a Chrome guy. Ian, are you what's your
I'm
browser
not either.
choice?
I am a Chrome guy, although I'm a disappointment to all of my tech brain siblings who I might as well just be giving my data to the bad people of the world.
As opposed to using Firefox, where your data is completely airtight, or are they like Tor browser guys? Are they Onion guys?
They
or
are, yeah. I think they're slightly better. Although, we don't need to get into this Chromium stuff. But
we can. Andrew, what browser?
I do want to know. I just have Firefox for no reason that I am aware of.
I think it's
just I had it.
Cool thing.
Is it the good one?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I mean, it doesn't run this software.
Right.
It's the good one before you go into like full on girl with the dragon tattoo hacker level.
Yeah. It's the best one that's on the grid.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's like open source or whatever, so you can feel like you're kind of like a cool granola.
I guess I have Chrome on my laptop because this is so sad that I do enough writing in Google Docs that I need to have it with me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is this good? Is this a good conversation? I'm sorry I brought any of this up.
Well, I would say that to answer that question, it's certainly on par with the rest of the podcast. So,
I mean, good is aspirational for us. So yeah, this is fine.
Exactly.
This is great.
Good is
it's not bad. Mm-hmm. It is a little bad.
It's not bad.
It's teeny tiny bad.
Okay, great. Let's get out of it. So
I'm not loving my part of it. I should clarify.
Now that's a feeling I understand.
Y'all are doing great.
Loving my part of the podcast, because I'm learning this for the first time.
Well, you can change it. That's what I'm saying. So you can change it. You're allowed. You're allowed to simply not be in the part that you don't like when it's your podcast.
I immediately close my laptop and walk away.
Yeah, you log off.
Yeah,
just get the fuck out of here.
Again. Yeah. Well, let's get into our signature segment, the two questions. Did you see this part of the email, Andrew?
I mean, yes, technically, yes.
It is truly the lowest concept segment in the history of podcasting. You have to ask us one question.
I'll lift the curtain here and say about 60% of the time that Jake throws to me for a question, I'm thinking, now what could a question be?
Yeah.
What types of questions
what is a question? Yeah, what even is a question?
That's a great one. Should we start there?
No, I was going to say, have you guys ever been to Detroit?
Oh,
no,
Michigan?
I have not.
My father is from Ann Arbor, and so I've been to Ann Arbor.
We maybe corresponded about this,
but I was like 6.
Can I get some reads?
Yeah.
What is the connotation of an Ann Arbor versus a Detroit?
Well, Ann Arbor is where the University of Michigan is.
I'm from Ann Arbor. It's a college town.
Okay.
It is like an immensely college town. Much whiter than Detroit.
Yeah.
I remember it being very pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, much less white than other parts of Michigan, though.
Oh, okay.
Not much. A little less white than other parts of Michigan.
Is that because of international students, or is that more?
I think just college in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Zingerman's?
Yeah, you're talking about my parents.
Is that right? Is
yeah,
that one of the things?
Zingerman's.
It's like a,
That's the current, I believe, only kind of like even close to, if not world class, let's say like interstate institution from Michigan food wise, besides of course Little Caesars.
Uh-huh.
Right. But Zingerman's is, people from, I don't know, New York and LA are like, yeah, Zingerman's is a good deli.
I think Zingerman's was in was it the 5-Year Engagement? That sort of
yeah, it had to
Jason
be.
Segel movie. Yeah.
Well, that was an Ann Arbor movie for no good reason.
Yeah.
I didn't see it, but it must. Yeah. I went to high school right next to Zingerman's. I went to a alternative high school, which, just to give you a sense of what it was like, the year I started, maybe the year before, around when I started, they instituted you can't smoke weed in class anymore.
Right.
Whoa.
Well, my dad tells this story about how when he was in Ann Arbor, they had decriminalized up to like an ounce of weed or something. Like you could.
Yeah.
It was basically the greatest place to be in 1977.
Yeah, it was like a $25 ticket.
Yeah.
It's a real place where the glory days of it culturally were like, if you're a certain type of white person, it's like right around like the 60s. It was really like,
he had a good time.
Yeah, I think people had a pretty groovy time.
So when you say alternative school, were you like a bad kid, or were you like an alternative learning style kid? Is that like, what is the alternative?
Yeah, that's like nominally what was on the table. I think, it was the kind of place where you like call your teachers by their first names. Again, like until right when I got there, you could literally smoke weed in literal class kind of deal. So,
well, it was bong studies.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah. So it was for like, it had the reputation of essentially being like a type of burnout place, but also you were allowed to take classes through a program that doesn't really make any sense. But I could take like college classes and smoke weed all day. So, or be on quite a lot of LSD from time to time.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I didn't actually smoke that much weed in high school because I was this is such an insane calculus in my head, but like the risk calculus for me was that as long as you don't do too much, it's pretty much impossible to get caught with LSD.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it's just a little teeny tiny piece of paper.
Just so foreign to me as someone who would I'd be on the phone with my mom arguing why I should be allowed to stay for an extra half hour playing Beatles Rock Band in a basement, on Diet Coke, Well,
I'm also pretty, I'm a little older, so I think there's also the, this was the 90s, so just actual raves were being invented, so there was a lot of drugs just around this kind of Detroit-y type of scene.
The Detroit house music thing going on.
Yeah. So it's just everywhere.
Really cool is what you're telling me.
Yep.
I definitely in a better than usual way, but still not good ultimately. Definitely peaked in high school kind of jam. I definitely did. Yeah. I for instance, don't really do hard drugs at all now.
Same.
And didn't really through my 20s and 30s because I was I don't know. I get finished doing hard drugs when I was 17. I was I think I'm good forever.
That's pretty impressive. That's pretty
it is. You just knock it out. Yeah, just free yourself up for a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Have you been to Michigan?
Never been to Michigan.
What's the closest you've come?
Chicago. I got some family in Chicago, which I understand.
It's on the lake,
distinct
Michigan Lake.
Yeah, that's right. The phenomenal lake.
Yeah.
I do need to interject that if we're going to talk about your dad, I don't believe we've shared the only two pieces of information that I know about his childhood. One,
my dad?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
One, that he apparently ate a hamburger pizza every day of his college life.
Well, no. So I think this is related to the decriminalized weed in Ann Arbor.
Oh, yeah.
This might be the case.
Order a hamburger pizza at midnight, every night, which I don't. From my understanding, he parked cars for his job in high school. Granted, I don't, when you have a job in high school, you don't have too many expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose you could, but I don't know how much hamburger pizzas were going for in Ann Arbor.
Is this from fuck? What's that place called? I'm trying to remember the hamburger pizza. The place.
Oh, there is a hamburger pizza place.
Wow. Okay.
Or like a place that I'm trying to. Yeah, there was that like pizza joint in the like student side of things, which I didn't actually go to that much, but people liked it. I'm pretty sure is the hamburger pizza place. Well, so it's not like a thing.
From these stories, it's a wonder that he was at all fertile enough to produce 2 children. But
yeah.
Okay, so that's dad thing number 1. What's the second thing?
Dad thing number 2 is that he was some type of Michigan child prodigy bowler.
Yes, my dad was the Michigan State bowling champion in the 9-year-olds division.
Like a young kingpin.
So he was
damn.
Champion 9-year-old. He wasn't beating adults, to be clear.
Yeah.
And then I believe,
how
would I beat a 9-year-old? What do you think?
Yeah, how much better are adults than a really good 9-year-old at bowling?
Yeah, I wonder this. I mean, into adulthood, he was a capable bowler, but had put away childish things, I guess. So he was like, his form was good, but he didn't give a shit anymore. So like, he didn't do it regularly. I don't know. Yeah, my uncle was apparently the 7-year-old bowling champion. I wonder how low, like, is there like a 3-year-old bowling?
Yeah.
And at that point, like, how heavy are the balls, you know?
I guess, because it's at a bowling alley, so presumably there's no variation in the pins or the length of the thing.
The same pins.
Fair presumption.
Yeah. I'm just like, you can be as good as anyone at bowling at 9. Right. Would be my guess.
You're not competing against them directly. You're all competing against the same
it's you against the lane.
Yep.
Yeah.
You against
beautiful.
the lane.
Or the pins.
Yeah. Okay,
this is a great question. Sounded better, but it didn't really make that much sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, speaking of dad stuff, this segues nicely into my question, which is sort of coasting off of the film. Were either of you ever given a specific lesson on how to be a man? Or like how a man behaves? And if so, what did it entail? I'm not talking like how to change a tire. I'm talking like how to act like a man, you know?
Yeah. I'll just say no. It's pretty easy. My parents are immigrants, so they don't really have that type of conversation.
Yep.
But also, my mom, though she is like relative. My mom did most of the child rearing,
right?
But also, she's like this weird thing of like, not weird probably, but like very like sort of socially conservative through ignorance.
Okay.
You know, she's like your friend is the gay type of mom.
Yeah.
The one. Yeah.
Yeah, like literally that. But also, so like very, very, very like if you asked her, locked in on what gender roles should be, but also like didn't seem to have a great read on how those gender roles worked in like Western culture.
Okay.
To wit, like my sister and I think she was just like a busy, working mom because both of our parents worked when we were kids. Anyway, which is all to say, my sister and I did all of the same things, as until we were like teens, like just because, we're just all doing the same classes or after school programs without regard to like how they were gendered, which is so like I took like synchronized swimming classes with my sister. And
that's
like
cool.
Figure skating, like actual ass, my friends had hockey skates and I like did not know how to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah. But again, if my mom, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. Cause if you I'm thinking of my mom, any conversation, she's like, you're a boy, you do boys to this, right. But like, I read like all of the Nancy Drew and Babysitters Club books in my house just cause like whatever the fuck my sister had around and she read, all those 300-page sci-fi bricks that like teen boys read, like whatever the fuck those things are.
Older, your sister, or younger?
Younger, but we're pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think herein we reveal the artifice of gender, right? To say that you can have a conservative fixed gender role person or parent from a different culture who just is assigning different requirements to you than the ones that we would have in the US.
We're the first podcast to do this.
Yeah,
this is huge. What's going on?
I think for me, I as a kid, like in like where it didn't come out, like I didn't realize, for instance, like synchronized swimming was a girl's sport.
Sure.
Well,
because I was a kid.
Boys doing it, Or were you
no.
on the girls'
Yeah.
team or whatever?
I think I was the only boy they had ever had.
Okay.
And you were just thinking, like, what a fascinating demographic coincidence that I would be the only boy.
Yeah.
Totally unrelated to any
No, I just
cultural-
didn't. And the same with the figure skating, because even the figure skating was sort of more clear because I was just in that. But I probably quit when I was like 7 or 8. So it wasn't, but I had neighbors that played hockey around then.
Yeah.
It's Michigan, so it was happening. And I never, I didn't play hockey because I think because my parents didn't want to buy all the stuff.
Right.
Yep.
It was more like, gender roles, maybe, but and the other thing is, because now I'm like, my mom couldn't have been that oblivious. It might have also just been like our own personal convenience overrides any feeling we have about what our kid's doing.
I mean, I think honestly, that happens a lot more than people think.
Like, I was taking these classes because my sister was going, and my mom was not going to find me something else to do.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I did the same thing. Like, I played with like a Polly Pocket because it was in the house and it was really small stuff. It was kind of cool, Yeah. Same with, like, it's having, I think, as you're saying, Ian, like, gender, especially as children, like, you kind of just gravitate toward whatever cool thing is available to you. It's not like everyone has access to all this stuff.
Or just whatever thing, period, is available.
Exactly.
Like, sorry. I'm just like,
correct.
Your parents immigrated from Taiwan, is that right?
Sort of.
Okay.
My dad did, but he, Chinese Civil War, wasn't born there. He was born outside of Shanghai. And then my mom, similar World War II, moving stuff around. She grew up in Hong Kong. Yeah, but I mean, not to go back too much to this movie, but they did come up in this sort of like small Asian immigrant community in Ann Arbor, not Detroit, but like similar thing.
Well, we'll get to it, but what's interesting about this film is that it seems like the Michigan of it is slightly arbitrary. But Ian, did you have?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I know the answer is no. Clearly, no one taught you how to be a man. But
thank you. That's one of the nicer things you've ever said about me.
Yeah.
We didn't have I mean, as soon as you excluded like changing a tire type stuff, that was going to be my answer because we did get some of those. And I will say now, as both an educator and sometimes like a pseudo parent, I feel for my father trying to teach us. Do you want to
clarify that at all, or do you want to let that be the most bizarre thing anyone's ever said?
Oh, like I do a lot of childcare for my neighbor, which we've mentioned on the show before. And sometimes you just want to teach somebody a useful skill, and they just could not give a good goddamn shit about learning something. Like, I think my father tried to teach us just like how to change the oil or something. And I have a clear memory of being a Saturday morning where we all wanted to play Diablo 2 really badly. And we were just lined up. I have 5 brothers, Andrew also. So we were all just like being the grumpiest, least pleasant people to be around as he tries to show us this thing and his limited parenting time as he was also generally working. So
did you not have one of your older brothers ever try to sort of man you up in any way or tell you to stop doing that? It's for girls.
I guess you don't know my older brothers that well, but this was just not a concern for them.
Okay.
They would tell me that I was extremely bad at Super Smash Brothers and I should be embarrassed to even play like that.
Sure.
But
you should.
Wouldn't.
Who was your main guy?
Ness. I was a Ness guy. Ness man. Okay. Still am in many ways.
Ness. Is Ness the little boy that at one point was just like the default? Oh, is he from a game?
He's from Earthbound. Yeah, so he was from a game that, like, at least, Ian, this was probably your experience. I first learned of this character from Super Smash Brothers.
Also true.
Got it.
And because he was from a Super Nintendo game or something. But
I'm the age where I like played Ice Climbers on Nintendo.
Oh shit!
Like, I was like, oh man, I fucking love the weirdo Ice
You're
Climbers.
practically a Walt Kowalski.
I was about to say, we got a Clint Eastwood generation member here on podcast.
The greatest generation. I have 2 incidents that sort of, I think, will either illuminate or be completely unsurprise of masculine training. So there was one time when my dad had like baseball on or something, and I asked him, so like, how did you get into sports? Like, why do you? Because I never had any interest. And he said, to be honest with you, I realized that often when you're talking to other men, this is the only thing you can ever talk about with them. So I just started paying attention to baseball.
Grim admission about
to have
how,
something to say.
Yeah, baby boomers socialize.
Yeah.
Wow. And then there was also, this is a sort of dramatic. My cousins, I'm like, my dad's the eldest of 3. And so there's like 8 years between my sister and me and the next round of kids. So the eldest of them was having a bat mitzvah. It was my cousin's bat mitzvah. And so if she was 13, then I must have been 21.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm hanging out with my dad. I don't know if he was in the circle, but it was like 1 or 2 of my uncles. And then like he has some cousins who are his age. So it was me and like the men of the previous generation. And for the first time, they're talking around me like I'm one of the men instead of one of the boys. And it was horrifying because like they're all talking about some attendee of the bat mitzvah had an au pair. So they're all they're just saying disgusting shit
love
about
where this is going. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean I don't really remember it, but like someone my age,
right,
who is from Sweden or whatever, and the things that they, think it's something like nice to invite some candy to the party or something, like Jesus.
Cool.
And then one of them also, this wasn't any of my uncles and it was not my father, referred to his own wife, some relation, as a spinner. Like, yeah. And I'm like, get me out of here. Like, this is awful. I'm at some like banquet hall in the East Bay. I'm like, I don't want to be this.
Yeah.
I don't want to be this kind of man.
I guess that is learned.
It's learned, yeah.
I'm realizing another cultural thing as we're talking. I feel like a memory that I'm having was like my one dad moment, because, he's a Chinese guy, so he's really good at ping pong. And generally, at least at my house, it wasn't like the moms would not be playing ping pong, but the dad sometimes would, or be doing other shit in the basement. And so him smoking me at ping pong, I think actually was when I was like 7, just like slams to the very tippy corner on this child, like 21 in a row, and just like, drops the paddle. I think that was his attempt to man me up, but it reads differently because of America.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's
no one's going to take it easy on you,
yes,
etc.
exactly. They're gonna smoke you right to the tape.
Yeah. But it's just like, okay, but what if I don't play ping pong because it's stupid?
Checkmate.
Yep.
This is beautiful ground to set up our conversation about today's film, Gran Torino, directed by Clint Eastwood, released December 12th, 2008. This is his second 2008 release, less than 2 months after Changeling, to Angelina Jolie, which is sort of a box office disappointment. I mean, it made several times its meager budget, but I think that's just on Angelina Jolie's name alone. And then this is like one of the Clint movies. Like this is probably the most recent Clint Eastwood movie that people remember. It was a huge hit. It made like $300 million worldwide.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It has that like, white people are gonna love this vibe to it.
And it kind of lives between like prestige drama and action, and
Well, and
it has all the like trappings of it's like the Americans of movies. It's like all the pieces of like art.
Well, and it's coming at it's his first film after Obama is elected, so it's like it's time to talk about race in America, but also he's very nakedly playing like a variation on Dirty Harry, to the extent that I found this Ain't It Cool News article. I'm sorry to have mentioned them. Patooey, gotta spit on the ground. Where they reported that they got some tip that Malpaso Productions, Clint's production company, was looking for a 1972 Gran Torino for a film, and I guess this was enough for them to determine that this must be Dirty Harry 6. And they were breathlessly announcing that it was going to be Dirty Harry's retired to Michigan in some gang.
Is that Dirty Harry's car or something?
No, it's just a car from 1972. When Dirty Harry came out in 1971. So I guess that was enough for them.
So it's the vibe. Sure. Okay.
Exactly,
sense.
it's the vibe. But Andrew, what's your relationship to Clint Eastwood and to this film at all prior to us roping you into this bullshit?
I had never seen this movie.
Me either.
What a treat for you.
Yeah, it's not. I feel like for a Clint Eastwood movie, it's good. It's good for Clint.
It sounds like you haven't
I'm not
seen
a
that
fan.
many Clint Eastwood movies because there are really good ones.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of
true.
the stinkerest ones we've covered in a while.
Okay.
I'm gonna call this like third quartile Clint, if I can put an extremely arbitrary.
Quartile.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just say, I was like, well, I think the only one that I can think of that I know he directed, I'm not like a super fan,
Sure.
that I'm sure I've seen others, is American Sniper.
Right.
And it has to me that similar like issues Eastwood vibe to it.
For sure.
And I think of the two, I prefer this one, even though I think it is bad.
What about
That's where I'm at.
An Unforgiven or any of the Dirty Harrys? Have you seen any of those films?
Yeah, I've never seen any of those. So maybe,
Okay.
that's the other. But did he direct those?
He directed Unforgiven. He directed the fourth of 5 Dirty Harry movies.
Got it.
The whole premise of this show kind of is that he's more complicated than the
Yeah.
chair speech, but I think this is one of his less complicated, less impressively nuanced outings.
Okay. I think, you know what, I'm realizing what I think of is like when I think of Clint Eastwood movies, chair speech counts. Like, so
Sure.
like when
we're on the fence as to whether to cover it as an actual film, so we're right there with you. There's also, there's an argument to be made for that and the commercial, the like Ford commercial or whatever that came out like
Super
a
Bowl
year
commercial?
prior about how much America's back.
Yeah. So given that, I guess, given that, that's why I was like, this is to me, when you realize that I've seen very few Clint Eastwood movies and one of them is the chair speech, you could see where I'm coming from.
I mean, you might be pleasantly surprised that he's even trying extremely clumsily and racistly to say that racism is bad. So I can understand that. Yeah.
Ian, had you seen this before?
I had seen this. I think this is. Okay. I didn't see this. We've talked about seeing Clint in theaters, which I don't believe I've ever done. But this I saw like right when it came out on DVD. Probably. Okay. I think by now I was kind of aware of prestige films as a type of film, like Oscar baity type stuff.
One of them came out this same year.
Right. Yeah, it's true. The most famous one. Yeah. So I was also watching The Prestige, but I was watching this and thinking. Yeah, okay, this is like a famous filmmaker. This is a film about, like Andrew said, like an issue, you know, is it going to pull the rug out on us? And unfortunately, if I'm remembering correctly, I enjoyed it as a 16-year-old and thought, wow, you know, I don't want to spoil the ending here, but the bravest thing you can be is this type of sacrificial white guy.
Yeah.
Right,
you know?
Christ.
The ending is so weird.
Strange.
Weird, not to jump ahead. The thing that is like, so surprising is, relatively speaking, what a dive into Hmong culture, communities. It's
part of what made it such a divisive picture, I think, in the Hmong community, because half the people were just like, great that now people have even heard of us.
Right. I mean, like I took this Spanish class in college that was like Spanish 1 through 4 in 8 weeks over the summer to fulfill your language requirement real quick.
Right.
And so there was a girl in my class named Nancy Vang, very nice girl as far as I remember. And day 1, we were practicing saying like, I am from here, my parents are from here. And she asked the professor how to say, like, if there's like a word for Hmong people in Spanish, and the professor didn't know. And she started explaining it to me I think we were like partners or something. And I said, oh yeah, no, I know about Hmong people. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, and I said, oh, it's Gran Torino. Like I hadn't even seen the movie. And I'm like, there's the movie with the Hmong people in it. And I think that is like, for a lot of people who don't live in Minnesota or Michigan or Fresno, a lot of non-Hmong people probably first heard of this entire 1,000-year culture.
From absolutely. And it doesn't, I mean, it's not relevant particularly to it. Like this movie, I mean, it could be any marginalized.
That was going to be one of my questions. I mean, because basically anybody besides white people has they treat their elders better. I mean, white people are
Sure.
probably at the bottom of the list of people who respect older people and like give them dignity as they sort of age out of productive.
Yeah. Any immigrant, but also, you know, like setting in Detroit too, it easily could have been like Lebanese folks or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it could have been black folks. It could have been.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. Well, to explain sort of some of this arbitrary decision. So this is written by a guy named Nick Schenk. This is his first produced screenplay. He'll go on to collaborate with Clint a couple times. He writes The Mule and Cry Macho. Both of those are adaptations of pre-existing works. But he also writes that movie The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall.
Oh, yeah.
But this is inspired by some Hmong guys that he worked with at a factory job who he would chat with on like smoke breaks or whatever, and whose culture I guess he found interesting as it relates to a white guy.
Yeah.
Which makes
it's
sense.
about that level of guys from work who you've been to their house for 7 to 8 meals.
And it's kind of interesting what kind of stuff they got going on over there. You know?
And you decide
like you get drunk with them.
Yeah, exactly. The brave thing you say is like, actually, these guys are like pretty nice to hang out with also. I'm surprised.
And I think that's where the movie is. Well, just to finish the thought. So it was originally set in Minnesota because there's a large Hmong diaspora community in Michigan, but an even larger one in Minnesota.
Yeah, larger. Yeah.
And
for
then I think because of the Ford connection, because Walt Kowalski is like a former Ford employee, they decided to shoot it in Michigan, but also Clint is very open about the fact that Michigan had big old tax bends.
It's not the first. Yeah, like I said, like it's not really the first. This is a Detroit movie. Like again, not to marginalize this marginalized community, but you know, I would say like if I were setting a story like this in Detroit, it would be a Muslim family.
Like
so easily,
like Dearborn and like these types of places where there's huge communities.
I think,
well, or maybe Italian. I understand that there's a lot of moms make spaghetti. So maybe Italian.
That's right. That's right. It's white people's spaghetti though.
Yeah. What's as opposed to like white people's spaghetti, meaning like jarred
like
gravy
ragu. Yeah,
ragu.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
Is that movie good? I've never seen 8 Mile.
My dad,
I think it is.
Loved it.
White dads love to make an exception for Eminem. I've heard so many of them do it.
I would say for like first movies from rappers who have not turned out to be great actors. I know that's like putting a lot because again, you know, plenty of rappers have been great actors or good actors. Eminem has not turned, you know, ultimately, but it's way better than it needed to be by a significant margin.
It's Curtis Hanson,
yeah,
right?
We talked a lot about LA Confidential on this podcast for various reasons. And it's legitimate.
It doesn't need to be as good as, you know, because it's a fucking idiotic cash-in.
Right.
Like, why was it, you know, why was it like this?
Yep.
The one note I have for it is when you see it, the venue that they're in, that's doing the rap battles, is the named of a real venue. And the real venue was, I would say 4% as nice as that room, and that room is not portrayed as great.
Okay,
sure.
Great.
I mean, they usually degrime these kind of these places
a lot. Yeah. The shelter was.
I mean, I'm not itching to go there, and I might be itching if I was in there. So anyway, they do go to Minnesota to do most of the casting, incidentally.
Yeah,
and this film is, as we've mentioned, sort of this is the first Hollywood movie to have anything to do with Hmong people.
Yeah.
And basically everyone in the cast who is of Hmong descent is a first-time actor. You can, in a number of cases, you can tell. But then also, I watched this documentary it's a short documentary called Gran Torino Next Door, which is
focused on the Hmong casting and the first time acting.
Yeah, a bunch of like people posting about how there's a weird guy down the street who doesn't belong here. Come on, that's you know. But
the other type.
So it's but in this documentary you get to see a lot of especially like the teenage actors talking. And I found that they were actually being remarkably true to their own personalities off camera. So maybe instead of being sort of awkward actors, they're just awkward teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're kind of like, man, if it was, I don't know a ton about Clint Eastwood style, but I've kind of heard things he's like
one take,
one
shoot the
take,
rehearsal.
or super. I do think like, because as himself as an actor, I'm sure he just had like a very, he has a very sparse style that, once you kind of get it, it's pretty easy to do. And I do wonder if like a director who is better with actors or better with nurturing actors could have made something with these kids in a better way. Yeah.
I think it's possible. The script is bad to me. A lot of the dialogue is quite bad. And I will say that Bee Vang, in one of the interviews that I'm sure we're going to get into later for their main content, he said as kind of an aside, which made me laugh, that even on set, he would look at a line and, unrelated to it being racist, just say, I've never heard a human being say that in real life. So in one of the moments where he tells Walt, you can be as racist as you want, I'll take it. Yeah. He said, I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's not something people say about this
guy. We should give a quick sort of overview of the plot, just so we can sort of orient ourselves. So the film is about a guy named Walt Kowalski. He's a retired Ford plant employee and a Korean War veteran who is one of the last guys on the block in a neighborhood that is increasingly home to the Hmong community in Detroit. The film opens, he's at his wife's funeral. We get a sense that his two adult sons and their families are just dicks to him. They're like, they don't like him. They don't.
Now, I don't want to speak out of turn about a community that's not mine, but are these the two most adult Midwestern sons that have ever existed? When I saw them on screen, I said,
adult sons.
Damn, these are some
the guy,
Michigan
Brian
sons.
Howe, who I think is he's the main son that we like sort of return to. I thought for a second that he might be related to Pat Hingle.
Oh, sure.
Who plays Commissioner Gordon in the Burton Batman films, and he's also in a couple of Clint movies. So I thought, maybe he's working with, but he's just a big. Oh yeah, they're both what you might call like corn-fed boys.
They're like from the Brian Dennehy factory.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like they're both called Brian, so you're objectively correct.
Brian Haley and Brian Howe, they are from the Brian factory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And then we also have Geraldine Hughes, who's a Northern Irish actress, as Karen Kowalski, who is Steve Kowalski's wife. That's the sort of the main son that we see. Dreama Walker as Ashley Kowalski, who is the sort of the teenage granddaughter who has no respect for anything, wears like a halter top to the funeral and immediately asks about if she can have Walt's car when he dies. So, his family sucks ass. And then what do you call it after a funeral? Is that a reception as well? The sort of...
wake?
Yeah, it's like a wake type.
What's a wake?
Yeah, it is.
The fuck is a wake?
A wake is
a reception?
I'm sleepy. Hey, come on.
I'm dead.
It's like a drinking and eating reception.
Yes. Yeah. It might just be called the reception? That sounds crazy.
I suppose. And this is sort of at the same time next door at the house of Lore family. There's a large Hmong family that lives in the house next door. There is a party going on because a child has been born, or it's like a christening type ceremony.
Kind of. It's an infant.
But we get a very different scene of family coming together with a lot. There's sort of more respect and harmony in this house, and lots of food and people bringing gifts, and it's the contrast is clear that this is a culture that values family in a way that it seems like Walt would appreciate if he didn't hate them for being Asian.
Which critically at this point we've already been introduced to him being like unpleasant to be around for his own family. He'll say
I will throw this out there, though he doesn't get along with his family. I mean, his family are absolutely correct. Like, when the brothers are like, this is why we don't go to Thanksgiving anymore. I'm like, yeah.
But at the same time, we don't see him prior to his wife dying.
It's true. But I will say that something I see in myself in my worst moments, which I will say, any therapist,
like when you get out your hand mirror in the bathroom.
Sorry. Yeah. He asks, or he goes to get chairs, and his son says, "Oh, I could have done that." And he says, "Oh, I needed the chairs today, not next week," which is like this type of presumption of how the dynamic's going to be, thinking the worst of people around you. Yes, he seems unpleasant to be with, and it's made abundantly clear that he's extraordinarily racist. To me, a truly cartoon level of racism.
Yeah. That actually does bring up, I think one of the reasons it did need to be an Asian family is that every other pitch of what the family could be makes him unacceptably racist for American audiences.
Exactly right.
He was saying those things.
Yeah.
They could.
Yeah. If he said the N-word as much as he says gooks, it's like
I suppose they could be Vietnamese or they could be Han Chinese. I think if it was a black family, I suppose they could be still be a Lebanese family in this case. Although a number of the racist terms for Muslim people are sort of variations on the N-word. We get a special N-word derivative from one of the Latin characters in this film. But anyway, then we cut to the 15-year-old son of the Lore family, Tao Vang Lore, played by Bee Vang, who is sort of he's not fitting in. He's walking along the street, and his cousin Spider, played by Dua Mua, and some of his sort of gangbanger friends, as they're called in the film, including I will say all the gang members I thought were pretty well cast and did not have much to do, but did a good job with what they had. Spider's got a great face on him. That guy could play heavies in. Yeah. You know, I'm surprised he didn't turn up in like a Fast and Furious movie or.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He has mostly played heavies, and he told his own parents, "Well, you gave me these eyebrows," which I think is good. Yeah. Rejoinder.
Are you talking about when he plays Chinese thug in the Naked Brothers band?
Yes, I am. Yeah, maybe I am.
But all the gang members are like kind of like quirky. Like they look like a bunch of like villains from like a Doug cartoon or something like that. Like they're all real interesting. I have to say, I was like impressed by the gangs.
I mean, you also got Sonny Vu as Smokey, who is sort of Spider's right hand guy, and maybe like even the crazier one. He reminded me of a couple of guys that I knew in 6th grade who like scared the shit out of me.
Yeah,
I mean, they are I think among the best in the cast. And so first he gets hassled by a Latin gang who calls him, they call him some racial slurs. So we get this sort of sense of what I think the film is arguing is sort of a flattening of race where everyone is. Yeah,
it's all, everyone's, it's not what you say, it's what you do. Yes. Yes. And we're all, yeah. Like the measure of a man is his deeds, not don't get all your panties in a bunch about these slurs that I say routinely.
About like historical circumstance or like structural inequalities or anything.
Just like any crack a history book once.
Yeah. Exactly. This is why we get the erasure of like the power of classism. I mean, this is the reason that gangs are often present in ethnic minority communities is not because of any type of bad blood that they bring with them, but rather because of a lack of resources, a massive underdevelopment or colonial extraction. No,
it's because the girls fit in and the boys don't. That's it. It's just because of that. Yeah. Anyway, the Hmong gang follows close behind. They sort of offer Tao a way to earn his stripes and join the gang, and he has to steal the 1972 Gran Torino that is in his white neighbor's garage. And he gets caught doing this by Walt, who I think tries to shoot him dead with a rifle, and then falls down and coughs some blood on the ground.
Hard to do.
Yeah.
And it goes off.
Oh, it does.
Right?
It does.
Like in that scene, am I correct? Yeah, it goes off. A fucking like long bore rifle inside a garage like that is the loudest ass thing you've ever heard. Their ears are both
Did
fucked.
Your parents have guns in Michigan, Andrew?
Not my parents, but because I'm from Michigan, so I shot plenty. I was just talking about this the other day. Like, there's no way this guy turned out good, but my best friend in 3rd grade was this guy named Todd who wore dad's best friend was camo to school.
Was the same Todd?
Every single day. The same dude, yeah. Probably.
So wait, sorry, what did he wear every day?
This camo, like full on hunting, not fatigues, but hunting camo, and would miss the first 3 weeks of 2nd and 3rd grade, and presumably every grade after that, to go deer hunting. Wow, which is like, I mean, that's like such a full commitment. And look, I guess I don't know for sure, but demographics and circumstance are working hard against Todd being a good person today.
My dad's friend Todd made an extraordinarily long and loving "Here's what Ann Arbor looks like today" video for my dad's 60th birthday. So he seems to have turned out okay. I think he like sells boats for a living. He's fine. But
Okay.
so
Right.
That is true. I will say, technically, I was in elementary school in Ypsilanti, which was the poorer neighbor to, although it was somehow still part of Ann Arbor Public Schools.
well, shout out to all Michigan Tods,
honestly,
let's say. I hope they're all doing well.
Yeah. Well, again, it's him and Todd Rundgren,
sure.
so I actually say mostly not shout out to Michigan Tots.
Maybe shout out retracted to Michigan Tods.
Conditional shout out to some Tods for good behavior.
Yeah.
A
Todd.
Todd at least, yeah. So, wait, does it happen that the gang comes to the house and Walt chases them off first before we get...
I think they're nearby.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Okay. So basically, Walt he ends up defending Tao and the family from the gang, for which they are grateful. And then Tao says that he is sort of, he comes over to Walt to pay off his debt. And this is presented as a cultural practice to pay off his debt by just becoming a slave to Walt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, less than Dirty Harry, I will say this whole middle section and any general interaction with the Hmong folks who were not gang members. I actually both. To me, this is such a like cowboy movie.
Sure.
This is just like these savages are like, there's a little kindness in them.
Interesting,
but they don't understand
it's
our
very
ways.
interesting you say that because like the Sergio Leone movies, especially Fistful of Dollars, is riffing on a Kurosawa film on Yojimbo, which is in that film. It's sort of a stranger comes into town to help deal with some gangs, and in Fistful of Dollars, it is more racialized because I believe they're a Mexican gang, and there is kind of a tall, quiet stranger saves the town element here. But I will say also, it was around this point that and we also get the introduction of Sue Lore, who's Tao's sister, who is sort of like...
She's like the bridge between
she starts
Walt and the
she brings
culture.
Walt to a house party and like kind of shows him around and explains Hmong culture.
Yes. She's also the translator.
Yeah.
I texted Ian... I didn't realize this was a remake of Tokyo Story, which was kind of I was joking a bit. I mean, but there's a movie in here that I think is great. That is sort of a riff on Ozu's Tokyo Story, in that we get an old man who is not being treated properly by his children, and then someone else sort of
finds a surrogate family. And sure. Yeah.
It's like weird, but I think a quote unquote worse movie would have been a better movie. Like just something kind of like heartstringsy and like corny. I think a corny version of these characters works much better than what we got.
I mean, so like Anthony Bourdain always said, food is the thing that starts to cure racism, which I do. I mean, I don't think that's wrong at all to sort of bridge that first gap by saying like, hey, can these guys be all that bad if they make something that tastes good? But it seems like Walt is able to hold two ideas in his head and like their food. Because they start bringing him all these gifts too, and he's like, no, don't bring me these shallots to plant in his garden or whatever.
Yeah.
Which again, I did read that in many of the cultural commentaries about this film seems to be a total innovation, which it's tricky because, look, on the one hand, we all understand that some features of life will always be exaggerated in a Hollywood film. Right. But when you are introducing this culture and a huge part of the text is about, okay, how do we engage with people that we don't understand? The credits might as well say,
like, introducing Hmong people.
Right. Yeah. But so if that's the context and you are making something up that is extremely flattering to the interaction of Walt and saying like, look, the good races will be extremely generous, bordering on subservient with you if you are nice to them.
I mean, it's basically the like fake white person version of the first Thanksgiving, which is also why I kind of read like a cowboy thing. Because I was just like, and the thing that is to me very weird is like, you're like, Clint Eastwood is a traveled man. He like has to have had translators before or like interacted with people who haven't spoken English. The way that it's played, that you know, these, first of all, the number of the like Hmong adults who don't speak English at all is absurd. It's just like, what the fuck are you talking about that you can't interact at all with an English speaker and you live in fucking Detroit? Like, however, sure. But like, it also plays as if like, if you don't understand English, you don't read facial cues, tone of voice. There's like no communication because he's basically like screaming at them, making the universal gesture for go away, and they're kind of like well, no, we're bringing, we must bring you food.
Yeah, it reads much more as like a first contact story, like he's landing in an uncontacted island and they don't even share.
Yeah, they're Ewoks. They're not like humans. They're Ewoks.
To confirm your guess, Andrew, just a few years prior to this, Clint Eastwood made a film entirely in Japanese where all the Japanese people, although they have certain cultural practices which are uniquely Japanese, they're extremely evidently just human beings. So he is capable of understanding. Letters from Iwo Jima. Film only in Japanese where everybody is acting normal. And by normal, I don't mean white. I just mean like human beings. And crucially, like you would expect.
One of the credited screenwriters of that film is a Japanese person.
Yeah. Maybe it's just in the right because it requires a white person who has only been, you know, sees Hmong people as like a smiling, deferential, like purveyor of roast pork.
Right.
Otherwise, what the fuck is this?
Well,
this is insane.
We almost never get subtitles, which in the Gran Torino Next Door short doc, it has like behind the scenes footage of obviously like the take that's used in the movie because there's usually only one, and the Hmong filmmakers of that documentary subtitle lines that we see in the film, but we don't know what they are. And it's, you know, it's what you would expect. It's like
the mom is saying like, tell them we're your neighbors.
Tao, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
He's angry at us or whatever. But like, I think it's remarkable that they are, as you said, they're Ewoks. They're like, they're unknowable, inscrutable, like foreigners.
Who don't behave like human beings.
Yeah.
Like, again, like he's screaming at these people who have brought him food.
Yeah.
Especially if they don't understand what he's saying, it's just this kind of like half smile and kind of like, I'm going to keep moving. Right. Like I've been programmed, I guess, to like deliver this. They're very NPCs, like in a way that's like, what the fuck is happening here?
Well, and in the doc, Clint appears briefly and expresses some fairly surface level admiration for the Hmong community in saying that he was very impressed that the young people are still learning the language, that they speak both Hmong and English, and you know they're keeping the culture alive or whatever. But like that's not really in the movie. It's not. There's very little to do with the experience of multiple. For example, like we only see one boy struggling to sort of figure out who he is. Everyone else sort of has already established that they are gangbangers for life.
Right. yeah.
I mean, what do we think of the kind of the film's engagement with masculinity? Because part of it, then it becomes a movie about Walt teaching Tao how to be a man, sort of how to be an American man, but mostly just how to be a man, like how to fix stuff and
with a little last minute revisionism again in the form of we expect him to go be Dirty Harry and shoot all the bad Hmong gangbangers, and he decides to be like Jesus Christ, as you said, Jake instead. But as to your question about gender roles, I think we get it really early on, even within the Lore family, right? Because they're saying like Tao is not a man; he's washing the dishes,
he's doing
gardening or something.
Gardening,
yeah. And I will say that it's obviously interesting to think about, and I think would be interesting to make a film about like old school gender roles across cultures, kind of like Andrew was talking about in our two questions, where thinking about, you know, like, of course, machismo and rigid misogyny, sometimes violent misogyny, exist in lots of different cultures.
Yeah.
Especially cultures that have come into contact with Christianity, I will say, as is the case with the Hmong people. And it is interesting just to say, like, okay, these are rural people, their lifestyle is different, and that's maybe meant partly as a consequence of poverty, right? Because you live in I think the main countries that Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and China.
Yeah.
Countries that have faced hundreds of years of extractive European colonialism. So people who live in rural areas, I think they look at the fact that obviously people have to start doing jobs a lot younger, and
Right.
this is just a requirement of not having resources.
We do
right?
get this, and we get like glimpses of nuance and complication, especially when there's that first scene. Well, I think we'll have to go back and sort of talk about the scene with the first scene with the finger gun and the black men and Scott Eastwood. But so Walt is in the car with Sue, and she is sort of explaining. He calls them Hmong people, and she sort of explains the whole deal. Explains that they're not from the jungle; they're hill people. So we get a little bit of like, "Hey, hold on, your presumptions are wrong." And then she does explain, and this was fascinating to me. The reason that by her explanation, the reason that they are in the U.S. is that they were trained by the CIA they fought on the same side in the Vietnam War, and then after the war was lost, they had to flee to avoid persecution by the victorious North Vietnamese.
This was one of the reasons that Nick Schenk the screenwriter, was also interested in this story, is he found out about these brave anti-communist fighters. We like to
talk
US
on this.
Allies.
We like to talk on this show about. We'll use the phrase ontological criminals. This is something that often comes up in the Dirty Harry films, for example. And I'd like to suggest that this film is positioning all Hmong people as a kind of ontological capitalists, where they are.
I believe
it's as if they are kindred spirits with Americans because they fought for the same side. And the film completely elides. We should say Bee Vang, the star of this movie, goes on to go to Brown University and write and do a lot of interesting stuff, complicating and explaining how this movie is not a great representation of his culture, including he works with something called the War Legacies Project, which sort of deals with the impact of especially the secret war in Laos on the Hmong diaspora. But it completely elides the fact that Hmong people in Laos, Vietnam, and China were all already persecuted prior to this, in large part.
Mostly for their Christianity.
Yes, because of French missionaries who came and converted them to Christianity. And so it doesn't make any gesture toward the fact that when the CIA comes calling, there's like a power imbalance where you might not have as much say in like whether or not you get trained by the CIA to fight the people who were already persecuting you.
Well, and even then, there's a fascinating split from what the brief reading I was doing, where some people end up siding with North Vietnam, despite what they say in this film. So there's some, it reminded me a little bit of queer people in Cuba during the revolution, or, like women in Algeria, places where, or even in our episode with Lori, where we talked about Grenada, saying like, look, there are revolutions that happen in places where some minority groups are still suffering under the revolution, and they're forced to make a difficult decision, right? Where they had to say, well, do I side with my people and maybe like a liberational effort that doesn't really include me, or do I side with the colonizers who are also oppressing, just in a different way, just maybe not oppressing my minority group as much.
This comes up on on the season of the Blowback podcast about Cuba, about how, like, of course, the Cuban lobby in Florida is going to be strongly against Castro because those are all the people who left, the people who got like chased out, And you also there's an article
like, they took all my plantations.
Yeah, they're evil.
Correct.
There's also, this is an article from the Cambridge University Press from 2020 about the crucial role that Hmong people played in the growth of the Communist Party of Thailand. And like, in the 70s, most of the Communist Party of Thailand's liberated areas were in mountainous regions that were the ancestral lands of Hmong people. So, like, it's more complicated than...
It turns out they're not a monolith.
Yeah.
But I will say, I was also surprised to learn that it was Christian Republicans who really pushed for their immigration rights in the U.S., which is why they were able to come in the 90s, because there was like this block of conservatives who basically decided, like the people in this film that the best feature about them was that they fought with us and that it was a war betrayal.
But I think like in a just crass political sense, those, my idiot parents like basically voted like not even my idiot dad like voted actual like card carrying libertarian like a fucking lunatic. But like I think there is like this like pick and choose of like, the anti-communism, quote unquote, for whatever it's worth, is like so ingrained in these folks that like, I don't know specifically about Hmong voters, but like, and they obviously as a part of the Asian community have like some of the most difficult like demographics from an economic perspective. But my strong guess is they're like, they're like, it'll be the same as getting the like rich Vietnamese folks here, like surprisingly consistent Republican voters. It's like Cubans.
And, well,
like,
honestly, I mean, I think, for example, someone who fled the North Vietnamese army and came to Detroit or Minnesota, they have a lot more of a sort of an argument to vote as psychotically Republican. Then they have a lot more convincing argument than just some guy who's like lived in Ann Arbor his whole life,
guy from
who's never had a communist shoot at him before.
Yeah,
and perhaps should, but that's
what's wild, is if like either of the two like white screenwriter or the director had known more about how Asian communities work. Another thing they could easily have found common ground on is how much they hate other specific types of Asian people.
Sure,
I mean,
or other races.
There's definitely
yep. Definitely.
I was thinking that, given Clint's hostility toward centralized authority and toward like the state telling people what to do, there's a story of Hmong people in Laos, for example, first getting colonized by the French and then getting pushed around by the CIA, that it's like there's a Clint Eastwood protagonist in there.
Yeah.
If you look past the Asianness, but like I think once the story gets translated to
through
white
Clint's
context,
eyes, through an old white man's eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
And
there's like such a better story in there if there's just no way for him to access it.
Well,
yes.
But I wonder if we take the gang out of it, and the gang is really only there for most of the film
for plot
to push Tao to try to steal the car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But there's a whole section in here where it's just a man healing, and we even see that his relationship with his own kids starts to improve a little bit. Because like Sue is the first person, his family comes and they show him a bunch of brochures for retirement homes, and they tell him these places are like hotels. And then immediately afterwards, Sue is like, have you had enough to eat today? Like, have you, she comes in, and this is when she invites him to the party. So like, we do get this real contrast in how he's being regarded.
I was like Andrew was saying, I was kind of hoping for a turn into a sappy movie when, Sue asks him when he starts coughing up blood, and that motivates him to go to the doctor, and then he tries to share the results with his son, and we sort of see like, you could sort of relearn how to connect with people or how to share what's going on with you in your life. But that just becomes such a minor part of the film because
it's a technically worse and more racist movie, but somehow I genuinely think it would be better if it's like this old man learns to love because of his relationship, learns to embrace life, whatever the fuck.
Foreign neighbors.
The Blind Side is the year after this, which is another huge hit, and even more insidious because there's like a whole fucking like there's I think an ongoing legal dispute between the actual subject of that film and that family. And this is just, a guy who's getting some help from his neighbor.
Yeah. There's a real like Finding Forrester version of this that I honestly think I would have liked watching way better.
You're the man now, dog. Yeah, there's like a that movie is
truly
okay. It's I think less racist than this. Well, we got to talk about
let's talk about Trey. Let's talk about the Trey.
Yes, the scene where Clint calls his own son. He says, "Shut up, pussy," to his own son. Okay, so Scott Eastwood, he is Clint's
one of his many progeny.
One of his many children who was sort of slowly acknowledged because he was one of 2 children that Clint had with a woman named Jacelyn Reeves, who was working as a flight attendant, whom he sort of kept this relationship secret from Sandra Locke, who was the woman he was having a relationship with fairly publicly outside of his marriage to Maggie Eastwood. So this is like a sort of, some people have a second family. This is kind of a third family. But Scott first appears in Flags of Our Fathers, one of Clint's 2 Battle of Iwo Jima movies. And despite looking fucking exactly like Clint Eastwood, he is credited as Scott Reeves. And in this, he comes back and he is dressed in... Well, so, Andrew, I don't know if this is maybe we'll figure out sort of the chronological limits of this, but this is a kind of boy or kind of a personal style that my classmates felt extremely comfortable referring to with a word that rhymes with the N-word. And somehow this was totally cool to say, and like at least outwardly, my black classmates did not have a problem with white kids saying this about other white kids who wore Air Force Ones and like saggy pants and stuff. But he's dressed. Ian, did you have this experience? I know you basically lived in like a white utopia up there in the...
Well, I mean, yes,
Ian's
that's right. That's how Silicon Valley. I'm always describing it. I am from Silicon Valley.
Palo Alto, Menlo Park.
I mean, I went to a public elementary school and middle school, and there was certainly the normal co-optation of mostly black fashion and mannerisms and vernacular and stuff. And I wouldn't even dare to speculate about how black students at my school felt about this, because I think they were such a minority that, I, of course, probably be terrifying to speak up about something like that. Your actual feelings about seeing people ape.
What are you supposed to say?
Exactly.
Also, your kids. I mean, lots of kids, you don't clock it.
Yeah.
Got to give both sides a little bit of leeway, because you're just kind of stupid and just doing whatever seems cool to
my
you.
high school had it was not by any means like an equal, but we had a sizable enough black student population that I do remember somebody got beat up for saying something racist, which is cool and good and should happen all the time. But also, like, friend groups were fairly mixed, and I remember hearing like my black classmates say like, "Don't say that" type of stuff.
Oh, that's
which was good. Yeah, shout out to the Northern Virginia area in 2007. But yeah, so Scott is like he's playing Trey, who is I guess
he's funny. He made me laugh when he came on screen.
It's very silly.
He looks insane.
Humiliating his son. He's walking with Sue. I mean, the anyone's life outside of Walt's is so thinly sketched that it's anyone's guess what their relationship is. But then they encounter 3 or 4 black men that's hanging out on the street who proceed to Birth of a Nation style to start like menacing and threatening.
This is like Lynch justification material that you would see like propagandized in 1905.
They start hassling Sue and sexualizing her.
Oh my god. Her real like spoken word like slam poetry response to them really bummed me out. It was just like a white guy trying to like
weird fantasy
like actualize an Asian person or any minority like speaking up for themselves. I was like, what the fuck is this?
And I'm certainly not trying to, of all the bad elements in this, obviously young women do experience scary sexual situations all the time, I think, in their lives. But I would say they experience them, unfortunately, from all races and ages of people pretty much constantly. Right. So it's unrelated to
these folks specifically.
Exactly.
I don't think we're looking at an intersectional understanding of oppression here in this film. No, we're just
no, particularly based on what happens when Walt shows up.
Walt shows up and he does his famous thing from like the thing that everyone knows from this movie. If you haven't seen it, you know that there's a song at the end that Clint Eastwood sings, and you know that he does a little a finger gun. I actually didn't realize he made the little noise because he does make the sound.
He makes a bunch of times,
which is pretty funny. But he's staring daggers at them and saying intimidating stuff or whatever, and then he reaches into his jacket and pulls out a finger gun and points it at them. And I guess the idea is that he is so cool under pressure and so
unafraid.
Clint Eastwood that this freaks them out because they're like, what the hell is this guy doing?
Just being so crazy.
But then also
and
pulls out a real gun. Also,
yes,
yeah, that's the best part. He does the thing that's supposed to be cool, but then also does the coward thing of, but I do have a gun though.
Yeah. Right. Then he does the Dirty Harry thing of, I will actually for real threaten
I
your
will
lives
blow you away.
Because,
Andrew, I don't. You may not be as well versed in this as we are, but like the famous Dirty Harry scene, the "Do you feel lucky" punk scene. He is pointing a gun at a black man's head, and like he's
already killed two black guys in the middle of a crime, just like classic police nasty shit.
Yes.
Without evidence or clarity about what the situation is.
Right.
And he points it at a third guy who is unarmed on the ground, or mostly whatever.
And it's fairly premeditated because he is across the street while a bank is being robbed, and makes time to finish his hot dog before he goes over there to
right.
And this is also very Dirty Harry because one of the things that I think Dirty Harry defenders point to is like the misanthropic against all races type stuff, which we also get in this film.
We got to talk about this because there's a scene in Dirty Harry where someone else on Harry's behalf. So Harry gets a Latino partner named Chico Gonzalez, I believe is the character's name.
Yes, he's not a parody. That's the real name. Yeah.
Someone else says of Harry, he's not racist. He hates racial slur equally.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry sort of smiles. So he doesn't really say this. And then at the end, he says, don't forget racial slur for Latin people. I don't remember which one it is. Yeah. So he says one, but he mostly doesn't. He's mostly like very libertarian, sort of above race. I don't see it. I hate everyone equally kind of thing. Whereas we got to talk about this. How many of these $300 million are people excited to see Clint Eastwood say as many racial slurs as he can?
Oh.
Is this movie? Because
I was arguing to you over text that I think this is a classic case. We've seen this in other films, Andrew, where Clint will have a character say a racist joke, but clearly the character is being criticized or looked down on for being racist.
Yeah.
But also he maybe wants to we're kind of enjoying the joke at the same time, getting both of these elements. And to me, at least I read it top to bottom as of course we're supposed to think Walt is, so outdated, outmoded. This type of stuff is not acceptable. And maybe we can laugh at it in a very dubious way that's maybe enjoying the racism also.
Yeah. I wonder, well, maybe. I think it's, maybe I would throw out a mushier option that I think might be what I think, which is that it's not that it's that funny that he's saying it to me, but it's that it's sanitizing it. Because I do think his when they were the themes on the whiteboard, it's it's not the words, it's the actions that make a man. I think that's very much what they're trying to say here. Right. So I think that's what the slurs are doing. It's it's not about this. Look at what this ultimately good man does.
This is just surface stuff. He's just, let's not get confused.
Counterpoint to this.
Don't your little woke agenda, who cares about the words?
Counterpoint to this. Bee Vang in an op-ed that he wrote for the NBC News in 2021, sort of amid the Stop Asian Hate campaign after a number of acts of violence against Asian American people
around COVID. He
mentions, and obviously anecdotally, but that he saw the film in theaters and was very uncomfortable to hear people laughing at all the slurs. And I would argue that a lot of them are at least structured as jokes, or they are edited and written with the cadence of jokes. Yeah. And some of it is, just antiquated. It's going out of its way to find crazy ways to be racist.
Saying to the more repeatable ones of Dago and WAP and Mick and even to Andrew's point about why this film couldn't be about a black family. Even the slur that he uses against black people, which, just for clarity, I don't know how to hint at it, is spook. The word spook. it's like kind of
that's one of the most jarring moments because that man in real life 1000% just says the N-word.
Well, he would say the N-word. I think they do like we can't do the N-word.
It's almost an old joke though, because the guys are like, wait, this one that's a slur, right? Like that's because I think it's like older than them.
Yeah.
I wonder, I mean, do you think the movie is better if significantly less commercial if he is saying the N-word? Like, is it clearer that this is a damnable behavior?
No, because it's not. That's not what the character is.
Yeah,
the character is good guy who just hasn't gotten the the 2023 version is like, oh, you can't say it. It's a 2-hour long open mic riff about how you can't say anything anymore.
But actually, that doesn't mean you're racist because actually some of your best friends are Mexican and you still like to tell Mexican jokes.
Yeah.
It's some really like, oh, we're all just busted balls here. It's so weird because it's mostly not really played for laughs, except like in the barbershop scene where he's just busting chops with this fucking what is the dude?
It's John Carroll Lynch from Fargo and
John
from
Carroll.
Zodiac and who is? I mean, that's
it's just but those are played for laugh or like not played for laughs to the audience, but played for laughs among. Like, that's the thing that's so weird is Walt knows he's making jokes sometimes, but then not other
sort
times.
Of smiling at each other as they try to say the meanest, racialized cracks at one another. Yeah,
that fucking white guy doesn't scene later on in the same barbershop is the weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life.
And then, so that's like the big, here's how to be a man, here's how men talk to each other scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to push back on something that Bee Vang says in one of the articles that you sent me, Ian, where, because the button on that is that he says, Tao says, my ass hurts from all the guys at the construction site. And that busts up Clint and John Carroll Lynch. Vang suggests that this is meant to sort of emasculate Tao, who doesn't even know what he's saying. I read that as much more like Tao is one-upping these guys by being willing to make a joke about his own sexuality. I don't know if that's
interesting.
The case.
Oh no, I totally read it the same way that Bee Vang did. I'll say. To me, it came across just the silly guy who doesn't totally understand the idiomatic formulations of English. Doesn't really understand it.
Well, the reason this is a discussion, though, is because the character is so thinly sketched. Right, it's unclear how much English he knows.
I think sometimes it even felt like I agree. His like grasp of vocabulary seems to shift over time. Sometimes he's speaking like very normally. And he would be perfect because he was fucking born in America. Clearly,
he's one of Fresno, this kid actually. Bee Vang was.
But his like sister speaks like clear, perfect vernacular American English. It's just like it needs him to not have ever been to school in America to make that joke.
Yes.
Or to like fall into that pit.
Particularly to be like, what is he, like 16 or something in the
15.
movie? There's just no way that you've made it that far.
Do you know who clearly knows? Spider. Yeah, Spider and his boys clearly would never say that.
Right.
So like, what? How does he come up with that? It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about Spider and the boys and where these kids are getting, like how they all end up in the place where they are, and also talk about the Ford factory of it all, because they relocate the film to Michigan, arguably to underline this. It's about a Ford car, and yet the labor and the sort of economic circumstances of it all are so subtle as to maybe not be addressed by the film, because like one of the reasons, I mean, it locates the I guess the origins of Walt's hatred of Asian people generally in the fact that he blames Japanese car manufacturers for closing down his plant. And also Detroit, of course, is the place where the awful murder of Vincent Chin happens, who was confused for, or at least like useful enough, close enough to Japanese for two men to beat him to death over the same thing. But, you know, beyond Sue saying like boys don't fit in, we don't get any sense of the fact that these Spider and Smokey and them like don't have anywhere else to be after school or whatever. Like their prospects seem low. It takes Walt explaining how to be like a special racist man to get how this shitty ass construction job, you know, like he needs an in. So I don't know, where did you guys sort of see the economics?
The other thing I will object to is hopefully, and I think very possibly, getting a union construction job in Michigan would maybe be relatively pretty well paid. Actually, he might be making like $80 an hour.
That would be great. But
although I think my read between the lines for that was like he is being paid under the table.
He's like off the books. Yeah. But you know, I think that's how a lot of people get, you know, like a broken into.
It is a fucking union town, like, you know, for all the you know, entertainment guilds chanting this summer about LA being a union town. Like, no, Detroit
and shout out to SAG this week. Andrew, I believe you were single-handedly won both strikes this summer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Shout out to Francis Fisher.
I did a little bit
on the SAG negotiating committee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I joined my first union when I worked as a bagger at a grocery store in Ann Arbor under UAW. Like,
nice.
Yep. It was wild.
How old are you?
Because it's like, just everything. I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. Yeah,
that's really cool. Yeah.
It was a union gig. I mean, everything that can be is a union gig, and I mean, probably less these days, but that's Michigan. That's
like
also not meant
not addressed in the film at all. Like,
right?
No, it is a thing that it felt like the other side of this. Now that I'm learning that it was set in Michigan for this like auto angle, it does feel like they were just like Korean War is not going to be enough for him to be this racist. Yeah. Like, we got to give him two. We need to like double up on the like why you can understand why this good man might hate Asian people.
Which is funny because it's portrayed as like also kind of old fashioned, when in reality, I think a lot of the justification for the worst anti-Chinese rhetoric I hear these days is this sort of like vague industrial
economic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and also anti-Chinese rhetoric is at this point like an American tradition. I mean, it goes back 50 years. And it's always been economically tied, you know?
It's like, I mean, again, I don't shoot. It was in my head to finish the B side of this. I might have gotten distracted, but when I was saying my dad voted Libertarian or Republican every time, he fucking voted, you know, not that this is that great, but he did vote for Joe Biden off of the China virus stuff.
Wow.
Like, that's what turned him, like, personal peril.
Interesting.
It was like, okay, I guess I can't vote Republican anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you know, which is a different type of issue.
Yeah.
It's true. Sometimes that is the only thing that shakes people loose is, when they're suddenly reminded that they are of a group in danger. Yeah.
I mean, when you look at YouTube for, like, if you search...
I do my best not to.
I needed to learn about the shape of the Earth, and I've come upon some.
You've learned a lot. You got a bunch of new ideas.
1 hour and 50-minute videos.
A lot of options.
When you type Gran Torino into YouTube, you get a lot of like Gran Torino best scene, and wouldn't you know it, Gran Torino best scene is often the one where he points his finger gun at the black guys. And so,
but the only cautionary note I would give about that is I feel like you could pick a lot of gray area type films. I mean, these films that people talk about all the time on Twitter, like a Fight Club type thing that is meant as a critique of this type of person. If you looked up Fight Club best scene, I'm sure it's going to be them beating each other, right? Or doing something that is meant to actually in the context of the film.
The people who are going to to upload that are 14 years old, generally.
Right. Yeah. Or unfortunately just, mentally like 14. And again, I don't know if this is a total excuse.
Or they're bots. They're mentally just on a different plane.
Or they're mentally part of an algorithm. Yes. And I don't know. I don't know if you guys have a take on that, but as a movie that addresses racism, even I think the good ones could be misinterpreted sometimes.
Which ones? Which ones did you mean?
Yes. I have a big list. I'll read it.
Well, there's a list, yeah. It's on the wall behind you. It's nice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's the only decoration I have here. I don't know how you decide, like, at what proportion of the audience misunderstanding your piece of art did you fuck up versus it being the audience's fault? I don't have a
I used to get in I used to just to situate myself as one of the whitest men of all time. I used to get in an argument with a friend of mine about whether or not Randy Newman should be culpable for people misinterpreting his songs. I was on the argument the side of no, but I think this is Clint is
it's like
as not a he's not the screenwriter, and so I don't know that he's as engaged in fine tuning it. I don't know.
This also is trickier because of the Clint of it, because this is not just some like well-meaning, clearly I am against racism person. Clint is you can't call me racist. I just, well,
he makes a Charlie Parker biopic in 1988. He makes this movie entirely with entirely Japanese characters, but then at the same time,
he also yelled at the chair.
And he has a very famous quote about the self-same Bird movie where he said, "I am a black man in a white man's body."
He says, "I've often felt like a black man trapped in a white man's body."
Yeah.
And then he got in a public fight with Spike Lee over not having any black characters in Flags of Our Fathers, in which he said like he needs to shut his mouth. So I
mean, I think he's generally a guy who we could say is against racism in the abstract, and I would argue that in most of his films is like a humanist, but is a guy who is not interested in learning about say history or language or exactly. And I think that affects, unfortunately, despite what he may believe, in a dramatic way. Like actual results come from not knowing history. Actual bad results come from not knowing why language matters.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that would be, I don't think he's a person that, I think he's just like a lot of these like center conservative-y people, which is that like, they understand that it's bad to be racist.
Right.
They remain racist and they rail against being called racist.
He pointedly endorsed Michael Bloomberg instead of Trump. Like he didn't go
I'm not so far.
But I don't know. To me, that is exactly this type, because it's the type that says, I don't like. I think in real life, I imagine that he doesn't generally use slurs, because that's the type of like explicit, obvious racism that he probably objects to. But supporting Bloomberg means supporting the inherent racism of like the massive class structure and like red zoning and exactly.
Weird guy.
So, which is all to say that like the misinterpreting, like being responsible for misinterpreting the message is much more muddled because of like the Clint of it, which is just like, but what he actually believes about race and racism it's not difficult, but it is like not easy to explain.
We'll get into it, but the next film he makes after this is Invictus, with Morgan Freeman playing Nelson Mandela, doing a type of racial reconciliation that I think is fairly impossible for us to extricate with our lived experience, but is, if nothing, I think it's fair to say it is very complicated.
I mean, I think Bee Vang in the pieces that we were sharing with each other talks about the insidiousness of colorblind style racism, which I think is probably closer to what Clint is guilty of, right? To say like, well, I believe, like you're saying, Andrew, that people's deeds, good people are good people. But I thought it was interesting. Bee Vang was talking about the fact that they had a cultural consultant on set, but they clearly, I think they even had a couple, but they would push for whichever one was like conveniently supporting the story that they already wanted to tell, right?
We have a couple of cultural consultants, and whichever one is making the
saying yes to the thing we want to do. That
and then a number of the folks involved with this movie from the Hmong community who, like, they were casting people they went to like a Hmong soccer tournament. So they were casting just like regular folks who, before this, I mean, Bee Vang says he auditioned on a lark, like he hadn't really planned to. But then a number of the people who got involved with this film went on to pursue other projects in the areas of film and television. And like Clint could have produced one of those. Clint could have, I mean, just the level of putting your name on Clint Eastwood Presents, like without doing any other work.
We've compared him negatively in the past to a Martin Scorsese, who is probably also accidentally racist sometimes, but at least seems to be a guy who's like a little more open to saying, you know, has this world cinema project, and it's like, you know what, probably somebody else knows more about this than I do, which is a huge step.
And even more than Tarantino throwing his name onto the English language or the American releases of films that he of like movies he thinks are cool. Scorsese will put his name on stuff that, because if you like Kill Bill, chances are you'll like Hero or you know, I guess Chungking Express is a little bit further afield from Tarantino, but the Martin Scorsese World Cinema Project, like if you go from, hey, I liked Casino, movies that like Tuki Buki is going to be just like Casino. It's not, but like he's thrown his weight around getting these things, you know, getting other moneyed white people to invest in like restoring these films and releasing them somewhere. And, you know, there's no reason Clint couldn't do that, but he didn't.
I think they do have speaking of the, like, you know, the sort of like intent of the author, or like, how does this, you know, how to portray problematic characters thing. I think like that is a thing that I am on an island with this opinion, but like, you know, I do think like Mad Men and Wolf of Wall Street are my two go-to examples of this, which is like, this is from the creators. This is a criticism of this, you know, this is like, you look at these people, and yet audiences are just so wired that protagonist equals hero. I think the like very easy, like gun to your head, like really gut thing is like, do you want to be Don Draper or not? Yeah. You have 0 seconds to answer. Yeah. And the answer is almost uniformly from like the men who watch the show. Oh yeah. And so it doesn't matter like what, like, oh, this is about the update of this, or like Wolf of Wall Street, like, look at these like terrible people. Like the lizard brain doesn't let us actually interact with movies like that as a culture.
I'm not saying like no. I agree that just as much in personal communication as with art, I am not going to say that you are a bad person, because I believe you when you say that was your intention, but that's unrelated to the effect that your words or your actions have.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like saying, I didn't mean to insult you when I said this. That's great, right? I read a piece a few years ago about somebody saying like, this is why they're, you know, like a racial activist and a racial writer, and they don't use the word hate anymore, because people will almost never self-attribute hate. So if you tell somebody that they're doing something hateful, they'll say like, well, I'm not, because I don't hate anybody. Right.
Yeah. Oh, well then, okay, great. If you heard that, then that's convenient for me, because you're wrong, because I don't feel hate actually.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like,
what we can say is just, regardless of what you are feeling, this is what's happening because of what you are doing or producing or whatever.
I think that's absolutely like Walt doesn't feel hate. For Asian people, according to Clint Eastwood.
By the end of the film, for sure, you know, he's talking about how nice it is to be in the backyard with these beautiful ladies. He's calling the Hmong women beautiful, and this reminds me of, I believe it was past guest Molly Lambert on her great podcast Night Call. They were talking about Fight Club and how, unfortunately, probably a lot of the like frat guys who watch Fight Club were drinking, and they fell asleep before the end of Fight Club, and they don't know what happens at the end. And like, I wonder how many of the people enjoying this movie sort of zoned out by the time Walt becomes less racist,
or even fully watch it. I think that's the thing with the Fight Club. Like, all joking aside, you can fully watch the whole thing and still be it's on my dorm room wall. I just fucking love being, you know, this is about. Yeah. I that's the inherent weakness of this type of anti-hero. It's just like, it's not doing what you think you're doing. Yeah. For most people.
Let's talk about the end of the film, because Walt is dying clearly of something.
Well, what a bizarre turn.
Yeah, if we can just not skip past something I want to highlight only because of a special piece of dialogue. Please. I don't know if I generally watch with subtitles because I'm 1,000 years old and I don't want to miss any of the dialogue.
You're like Steven Tyler of Aerosmith.
That's right. Yeah. In the scene where Tao is beaten up and a cigarette is burned into his face, Smokey has a really special line that I just want to make sure everybody gets. If you have seen the film, you're thinking about revisiting it. He butts in and says, "Smashing's my job," which I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah. Oh man.
And smashing is his job in the film. That's true. So this is good. This is like a character shortcut in case you're trying to figure out who Smokey is.
Smashing.
I 1,000,000,000% did not clock that.
Hulk.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And they also, this is the same scene where he throws a tape measure at the ground to try to break
Correct.
it, and it's
Yes.
unclear if
He
he
does.
succeeds.
Yeah. There's no way he broke that. Those things are made of like titanium.
Yeah. So we get things come to a head after Walt goes to the gang and tells them to sort of fuck off. They do a drive-by on the Lore house. Everyone is okay in the house. Tao has a cut on his neck. I think some glass cuts him. And then they can't find Sue. It turns out Sue has been, I guess, kidnapped and raped beaten mercilessly by Spider's gang. And at this point, it's a little unclear what Walt's going to do. The film leads us to believe that he is going to exact violent revenge. He starts he gives away his silver star to Tao. He locks him in his basement.
Bizarre. That's the part where I was like, this kid really got hung out to dry.
Yeah.
That dialogue is so hard to deliver, but oh my God, that scene really bummed me out.
It's like,
give him
a couple takes for that.
Give him a couple. Yeah.
It's one thing
he really deserved a second take and needed it.
It's one
That
thing
sucks.
to print the first take when it's a scene between Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman, and it's their 60th film each.
Right. Yes.
Anyway, he takes the dog. By the way, we haven't mentioned the dog, but Daisy, shout out to Daisy, friend of the pod.
Oh, yeah.
This was Clint's real life dog, apparently.
I mean, she's a great uncinematic dog, like
old,
a little bit ugly and how beautiful, but a little bit ugly.
Yeah, regular looking dog, not an Alpo commercial dog. He takes her next door after several jokes, awful jokes about how he worried that his Asian neighbors are going to eat dog, and they say, we only eat cats, which is the kind of
those just are so lifeless, honestly.
And lazy. What are we supposed to feel the third time he makes it? Like, is this well, then it's our feeling
kind of the kind of joke that I feel like white people who have close relationships with non-white people, they kind of get excited to make a little racist joke that the other person knows is gonna be fine because through action they've shown that they're not hateful, but they still want to.
It was one of the good ones.
Make the joke.
Oh, this is mine. It's just so lazy, and it's so relentless. And honestly, I will even say the response is also like first draft Asian American retort. Like, come on, guys. Everyone.
I mean, Ian and I we met at UCLA, and which is basically a self-segregated student population between the Asian students and the not Asian students. Well,
we should clarify. I think particularly Asian immigrant students who are not born or raised in the United States.
But I think there's also, I remember.
I don't even know about that. I feel like from what I understand, there's just such a, because there's so many Asian people. If you're Asian at UCLA, it's incredibly easy to only have Asian friends.
My first week, someone said it stood for University of Caucasians Lost in Asians. That was my and we were there during the Asians in the library scandal, where that's correct. There was a sorority, a blonde sorority girl who made some very confused remarks about someone in the library speaking too loudly and too Asianly into a phone. And she conflated Chinese people with Japanese tsunami victims.
Listen, I mean, that is the thing that is admirable about this movie is how tedious and unoriginal the racism is. It feels exactly like what that guy is really like, except for, again, when he's speaking about non-Asian people, and then his words are surprisingly sanitized.
Repeating the same joke again and again is also a very real-life racist thing to do.
Just
a boring version.
I only bring up the UCLA thing because the kind of defensive, like self-racism that the we only eat cats joke it feels very familiar especially from like my Asian classmates in college. There is a lot of like, hey, we're in on
buying
it.
goodwill with assimilation,
right?
Or like you're saying, self-deprecation, for sure. Yeah,
I know. I just it's so
and it's
we as Asian people. I just want us all to just take a beat, second draft. What's your next? What else you got?
I mean, I
take a second.
My Jewish classmates in high school would make the jokes too, and it's like we don't have to give into this.
Yeah, or just be better. That's all. Not all I'm asking, but come on, step it up.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, but.
Turns out that he's not cleaning his guns to go shoot them all.
Yeah.
He is going to, I guess...
It's such a bizarre plan.
I mean, I guess he's sort of like weaponizing like missing white woman syndrome, sort of. Like he is basically forcing them to commit a crime against a white person so that the cops do something about it, I guess is the idea.
Yeah, is that what happened?
I think that's exactly what it is, yeah.
Yeah, and he, of course, falls back in the Christ pose.
He does.
Which is nuts. Just considering like Clint's position on religion generally, like we don't. Sure. It doesn't. He doesn't seem like.
But
much
it allows him to do the dramatic reveal of his first cavalry lighter, with sort of like showing that he's now fighting for a different cause, the honorable cause of
smoking,
neighborliness.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
It's just such a like. I guess if it were more explicit, because it is, I think you're right that is what happened, but that is such a bizarre plan that I'm surprised with the amount of other hand holding that's done in this movie that doesn't need to be fucking spelled out. Because
great point. Yeah, mm-hmm.
It's like I think you're right in that. What the fuck else could it have been? But what is he doing?
Yeah.
And I mean, the only kind of explanation we get is from, one of the Hmong cops says, like, well, because of what he did, like, all these guys are going away for a long time.
Yes.
So
because of killing an
showing
old white
us,
guy.
like, this is what he accomplished. Yeah.
Has that cop been watching the movie? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How would the cop know that?
Well, and
like, it's so weird.
Yeah, we get a strong parallel to Clint's other biggest stinker, I think, of the 2000s, $1 Million Baby, where he has a remarkably similar combative relationship with a Catholic priest who tries to talk him out of his climactic sort of pseudo-violent act at the end of that film. And in this one, we get the most, like, who the fuck is this guy? How did he get into the movie? No offense to this actor, but, like, him?
It's a weird... Yeah.
And he mentions offhandedly, like, working with the Hmong gangs, and we don't get any sense of what that means, practically. Which could be interesting fodder, like, again, this kind of... There's so much, like, left on the table here. So much meat left on the bone.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have any thoughts on the priest?
There's just zero reason for him to be in the movie.
I guess, except the only thing I can think of is like to give an example of a white guy that he's mean to show that
I think it's to that, and to give him an audience to voice his opinions, right, and sort of like make clear his evolution, not just with the Hmong family themselves, but with another white guy saying like, look. He confesses later, and it just seems like a very classic.
But it's such but like this character doesn't need it, because like Walt is, and I as far as it goes, like just mutters what he thinks under his breath, because it's like such a hard thing to portray a solitary character. But I'm like, he does a lot of muttering, man.
Yeah, he does,
like we get it. We know what's in your head.
He also speaks to himself in the mirror at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is, I don't know if you guys have spent time with old guys who live by themselves. I think a lot of them do start to voice their thoughts aloud as a real thing. Which I'm not saying is maybe the consideration here. I think it was probably just lazy screenwriting, like you're saying.
Well, what else are you going to do? Yeah. He could have been saying it to the dog, I guess.
He does say a little bit to the dog also. And then the dog is there to show that he's not totally... evil, because he can love something, and the dog represents his wife or whatever,
This is just like the action. The Final Plan is like the most action movie of version of like just Karen it, man.
Yeah.
Just call the cops as the white guy, maybe.
Right.
throw that out there.
It's true. What a denial of real life, the power of whiteness, because you could absolutely just sick the cops on some people without dying. You could very easily do this.
But also,
we saw them have a illegal gun. Many of them. They shot up the house that I witnessed.
Yeah.
I witnessed them doing the crime
so many
that is
bullet
pretty
holes in there.
arrestable.
I also, why can't Walt give the whole gang a masterclass in carpentry and give them all a trade? Like,
right?
Well, kind of like you're implying. There's the interesting. I mean, the fact that the priest is working with them is basically the only suggestion in the film of their humanity, because otherwise the film is basically saying like gang members of any race are garbage non-humans.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
in kind of the same way.
I think it's presented as like he's working with them. Like what a rube, what a maroon.
Sure, maybe.
Oh, sure. Interesting.
So he dies. We get a shot of Clint laying in a casket that I don't like. Don't like thinking about that.
The first time I think we've seen him in a casket on film. Yeah.
Because we got to keep the podcast going. And we also this gives the priest the opportunity to recite verbatim something racist that he said. And then you get the priest sort of saying, well, he repeats that Walt called him a 27-year-old virgin who likes to hold old ladies' hands or whatever. But he also says, I mean, I guess I'm going to call it the Z word. Not that anyone who hasn't seen the movie would know what that word is, because it's sort of an antiquated.
Yeah.
I do have to admit that was new to me. I don't know if I'm just not.
Me too. And I looked it up, and it's a little unclear. The provenance. It was suggested that perhaps in the Korean War, a Korean soldier who had been run over by the treads of a tank might have a zipper-like pattern on them. So that's fucking awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool to toss that around.
Where did this come up? I feel like this, because I just watched either Rush Hour or Romeo Must Die for a different podcast on Your Wolf Presents. But yeah, that came up and I was like, that clearly was that was their compromise, because they were like, we can't say chink anymore. Yeah. So we're going to go with Zipperhead, whatever the fuck that means.
Is Romeo Must Die the one that, does it have like somebody writing it?
That's the Aaliyah Jet Li.
Yeah, is it the one that has the ATV in it? Isn't there like an ATV
No,
chase?
that's Cradle to the Grave, which was after, I mean, both like Aaliyah's death and the relative popularity of Romeo Must Die. They were like, all right, well, DMX and Jet Li can do a thing now.
Yeah. I've seen them both. Doesn't Aaliyah play like a... she goes to a record store to listen to an Aaliyah song in that movie, right?
What? Oh, there's so many. Yeah, Anthony Anderson calls her you Aaliyah looking something at some point. It's so weird. It's like Aaliyah exists in the world of Romeo Must Die.
It is like Ocean's 12. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn wild.
Great film. Anyway. And then of course the final act of like fatherly acknowledgement. Walt has left his treasured Gran Torino to Tao, who drives it down the road from the end of Grosse Pointe Blank, I think. What is that, like a Michigan Avenue or something? What is
it? Is like a famous street or something. I read. I don't know.
Yeah, isn't it? I think it's Woodward.
Woodward. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's Woodward. I don't remember though.
I love his books.
I don't remember.
Just kidding. I haven't read any of them.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk about the song. Briefly.
Song. Well, I got to tell you, go ahead.
I will say this. I wish you guys had said that the song is notable, because I'll fully admit I just the second credits came up, I was like, okay, turn it off.
I missed it the first time. You gonna play it?
The song is notable for a couple of reasons. First of all, it begins with Clint singing the lyrics, which we haven't heard Clint singing. He sings a little bit at the beginning of Letters from Iwo Jima, or Flags of Our Fathers.
Yeah, you're right.
He's like humming, which is very strange. And then, of course, the beginning of he sings in Honky Tonk Man, where he plays a country singer. He sings in at the beginning of Any Which Way You Can, It's him
Beers
and
to
Ray
You.
Charles
Yes.
doing a duet of a country song called Beers to You, in which it is implied that they both fought together in Vietnam.
Yeah, it's really wild.
Really wild. But a couple things about the song. So Clint sings it.
Well, does Clint sing it?
Yeah, because it is credited, I think it's in the credits of the film.
Yeah.
It's attributed to Walt Kowalski.
Why?
So the suggestion is that Walt is singing this, this brings up something that I've thought about for a while, and this is relevant now because it's back on television.
All right.
Kelsey Grammer sings the Frasier theme song.
Mm-hmm.
Frasier would never sing the Frasier theme song.
Yeah.
And that's fucked up to me. And I love the show, but it really pulls me out, you know?
Yeah.
Do we think Walt would sing this?
No way. I mean, I will say it has.
Is it Walt's singing it in heaven? Is that the...
Great question.
Oh, yeah,
great
maybe all his burden has been lifted and he can sing it now.
No, he's the type of guy who can sing. It has, to me, the very precise tenor of when actors used to go on Sesame Street in the 80s and they would kind of like half sing like a little bit growly in a way, but I actually found it kind of nostalgic and soothing for that reason, where it's clearly just not somebody attempting to sing for real, and the stuff he's saying is kind of nonsense. So I enjoyed
Gentle
it.
now, a tender breeze blows, whispers through a Gran Torino, whistling another tired song. Engines
I really wish I'd...
Bitter dreams grow.
It's a song that...
at Gran Torino.
That
beats a
name
lonely rhythm
checks...
all night long.
Oh, no.
So here's what
Wind
happened.
whistling through a car is not a objective correlative that I'm aware of. That's not a thing.
Okay, so Clint kind of the music in the music in the films is by Kyle Eastwood, his son, and his
son, a real musician,
collaborator.
has done actual
Stevens.
nice sounding music. Mm-hmm.
So Kyle Eastwood, I guess, as an acclaimed jazz performer and arranger and composer and whatever, knows Jamie Cullum, who you guys may remember as one of those little British cutie boys who was on VH1 all the time. Jamie Cullum, notably not Robbie Williams. And so Clint has this little melody in his head, and I guess they decide we should get Jamie Cullum, and they send it to Jamie Cullum, who writes up some lyrics that are pretty bad, and he sings, and so he wrote the song, but then Clint performs it a little bit at the beginning of the credits. I think Jamie Cullum's voice is a very bad fit for anything to do with Clint Eastwood. It's very like Nordstrom at Christmas time.
Yes. It's like Bublé style singing.
It's Bublé style. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember something very distinct about this song. Andrew, for your benefit, I was a high school Bruce Springsteen fanatic, which is...
Okay. That's a certain type of
unusual. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm seeing it. I think I'm seeing it. I mean, at your age, it's unusual.
Yes. And this was the same year as The Wrestler, which Bruce Springsteen wrote a song for over the credits. Apparently, he was contacted by Mickey Rourke, not by Darren Aronofsky, which is funny. But the Wrestler, the song "The Wrestler" is very bad. I think it's like so stupid. So he's singing like. Have you ever seen a one-trick pony running in the field so happy and free? If you ever seen a one-trick pony, then you've seen me. But then there's a line. If you ever seen a one-legged dog making his way down the street, what? You ever seen a one-legged dog, then you've seen me.
Yeah.
So weird.
So funny to think of a one-legged, like a three-legged dog has enough of problems, you know?
Yeah.
One-legged dog, that's like a joke about what do you call a guy with one leg in a bush or whatever? Russell.
Yeah.
I thought
it was a dick thing. You're gonna
No.
I get it now.
This is a family show. But I do distinctly remember watching the Golden Globes that year, where this song was nominated. Gran Torino was nominated, as well as The Wrestler.
Wow.
And Springsteen wins, and I remember what he said. So I have the clip for you now.
This is the only time I'm going to be in competition with Clint Eastwood. I know that for sure. Felt pretty good, too.
So I remembered the camera cutting to Clint Eastwood and him staring daggers at Springsteen. But it cuts to him and he gives like a cute little smile because
I would have gambled on that.
Oh,
he's won two
like
Best Picture Oscars, so I think he's not like that hurt about it.
He doesn't care anymore.
Yeah.
I know this is a bit that's been done by, comedy people, but just go back to Will Smith raps the plot. Or whoever, just say the plot in the song.
It's pretty close. It's close enough that you should just commit to it. You're right. Yeah.
It doesn't, the lyrics disappointingly don't really get into his feelings about Asian people. Or,
yeah.
I guess it's just like,
it's Walt from Heaven.
Yeah. It's surprising to me.
This is Walt from Heaven.
Clint is a talented jazz pianist. We've seen him in other films playing jazz piano.
Yeah, he's a very accomplished piano player. Yeah.
And it just reminds you that you can just be good at one aspect of something and just dumb as rocks about something else in the same exact area. Because to not be able to recognize that this is just nonsense, that this is something you should not put in
this
attempt of a serious film.
A film with some of the worst music cues I've ever heard in my life. Invictus, which we will get to next week.
All right.
Invictus
Set it up.
featuring the South African boy band Overtone.
Cool.
So more about Overtone next week, but I think this just about brings us to the end of our conversation about Gran Torino. Any final thoughts from either of you?
I thank you for this is a movie that I've for a while been like, I should watch it, and I genuinely there's no way I ever would have. So I'm glad you guys made me watch it. It was
you're welcome. I was not expecting that response.
No, truly, because I was like, okay, but yeah, it was about what I expected, I guess. No, it was. I will say this: it was slightly better than I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Because of my memory of it being that I enjoyed it, I think it graded a little harder for me. Just as a, 13 years on or 15 years on since I saw it originally. But I agree with you that aside from the racism, which colors almost the majority of the movie, the rest of it is competently made and well shot. And we didn't really get into much of the technical filmmaking. It looks like a professional top
looks
tier
good.
Film.
The casting, the casting looks wise, fucking incredible. Like everyone in it. I mean, maybe not some of the other gang members. So the Hmong cast, and most of the white guys look like the pieces of a amazing movie.
Yeah. We're sort of on the other side of Clint's big movie star period. He doesn't really work with movie stars much until Unforgiven, and then through Changeling, he's in movie star mode, and now he kind of goes back to sort of casting faces, and there's some great faces in here.
When the gang are appraising the Gran Torino, that shot and those guys delivering all those lines was great. That was actually when I was like, oh man, this movie's gonna be good, and then it wasn't. But
I mean, Andrew, I encourage you to check out some of the other Clint Eastwood movies that are actually good. Like the
unfortunately,
you're busy.
I should.
You're
no, I just know that I won't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's good to know yourself. It's important.
I have no good reason to not, and I should let you give your recommendations because I want to know what I'm not watching. I just know that I'm not gonna, but I know that I should.
Unforgiven is great. I recommend Unforgiven quite highly. The film you made after that called A Perfect World is really good. About Kevin Costner is an escaped convict who sort of accidentally kidnaps a fatherless boy, and then they sort of develop a relationship, and Clint is the Texas Ranger pursuing them.
Bridges of Madison County.
Bridges of Madison County is great.
Yeah.
Aforementioned Hockey Tonk Man, I think is
Hockey Tonk Man.
High Plains Drifter.
I would say High Plains Drifter is wonderful. I would say Changeling will really surprise you. Changeling and Richard Jewell will both really surprise you how hostile Clint is to the cops after.
Despite being one of the most famous movie cops, and not just cops, but rebel, nasty cops. Yeah.
Yeah. Both Changeling and Richard Jewell are pretty sturdy ACAB flicks and very solid.
Good for him.
Complicated man.
Yeah. I do.
No, fair.
complicated on the other side. We used to unfortunately have a running count. He's taken a long break, but he fell back on his old habits of a rape or attempted rape in a film as a like plot point for driving male
Oh my
action
God, yeah.
There was like a run of, I don't know, like 5 or 6 films in a row early on that we saw them.
Yeah.
And he
That
moved away
was
from
so
it. He graduated.
bizarre.
Yeah.
And
Crucially,
I mean,
the like at the time, like 19-year-old actress merely had to get a bunch of makeup put on her face and show up and look upset. She
right.
was
That's true.
She at least
not
didn't have to do the
subjected
scene.
to
Big
acting
improvement.
any kind of
Yes, big improvement from the past. And also, I appreciate that we got a lot of humanization beforehand, not just the classic human who has experienced rape is only a victim, after the fact.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Although
I mean, she's probably the most full-featured Hmong character.
I think so.
'cause,
More than
She
Chow.
talks
Chow
the
doesn't.
most.
Yeah.
She says the most words, but it was a little uncomfortable when one of the things he says when he confronts the gang is like, you did this to your own blood, suggesting some kind of like subhuman, they've forgotten the incest prohibition that is crucial to all societies or something.
It's such a not bizarre. It's in fact very understandable, but it's such a like, the fuck does this? A lot of this movie does not need to be in here. Yeah. And the tone, the middle becoming a man, like grumpy grandpa, young boy montage. Once you've seen the whole movie, that shit is unbelievably out of like the tone is bizarre.
What's weird is that's kind of the main part that I remembered from the film. I will say this loomed large in my memory because I thought this was a key element.
I think the version of this movie that doesn't have the gang and that just has this man, this bitter old man who's alienated from his family and racist, coming to sort of develop a fatherly relationship with the boy next door and dying and leaving him the Gran Torino, like dying of lung cancer or whatever. Yeah. I think that movie, while you guys have both mentioned that it would be kind of corny.
It would be corny, but better, I think.
Yeah.
I just think it would make more sense. I mean, honestly, like, the conflict should have been asking the love interest, who's only in for a second, out. It should have been like a fucking, this is, I'm racist, but this is how
weird movie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Truly, I just said it, but I'll say it again. Thanks for having me watch it. Thanks for having me on. This was fun, and that was not fun, but I'm glad I checked it off my list.
Well, you're welcome. Is there anything that you're working on, or anything you want folks to check out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want the aforementioned Earwolf Presents, oh my god, they shouldn't have let us keep this name, but the limited series. Do you understand the words that are coming out of our mouths?
Oh yeah, Chris Tucker mode. Yeah,
it's very stupid. It's unmissable, but yeah, we're watching fucking Rush Hour.
Great.
Gotta just give a little embarrassing appreciation. Certainly when I was in college listening to almost entirely the exact same types of podcasts made by a bunch of white improv guys, also getting into Yo, Is This Racist was just kind of like, oh, you can just do other things with the medium that are also fun and
something
interesting.
else.
It was great. So I appreciate you coming on. Fun to have you.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, thanks for having me.
For real, I second that. Yo, Is This Racist? You and Tawny Newsome made me extremely less of a shithead. I mean, it wasn't that hard to do. There was like a
I guess
from
very low
big old shithead.
But yeah, it's good to learn about, like Walt Kowalski didn't learn, maybe that racism isn't just like not saying the N-word. There's actually a lot more to it, which could be very
That's a good place
nuanced.
to start. You should definitely start there, but keep going.
Yeah. Necessary, but not sufficient.
Yes, you're right.
Well, that about does it for us. Remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review, help us on the algo. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad, write a song about it, send it to Jamie Cullum. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcasty4Me if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Clint Eastwood podcast. You can email us at podcasty4me@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. Next week, as I've mentioned, we are talking Invictus. A little teaser for that episode. I watched a documentary about the same event on an airplane that was produced by Red Bull Studios. And I'm not sure which one I liked better. So just a teaser for next week. We will see you then. Ian, thanks for coming on the show, bud.
Sure. Yep.
All right. See you guys next week. Ooh, what racial slur should I go out on? Just a little joke.